They say your first firefight tells you everything about yourself, what kind of soldier you'll be, what kind of man you are. Mine taught me I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. But before we get to that story, if you're new to this channel, son, you better hit that subscribe button right now. Because this isn't Hollywood fiction. This is real. This is what they don't teach you in manuals. And I read every single comment when I get time. So tell me what country you're watching from down below. If this story resonates with you, that like button isn't going to press itself. September 2002. I was 27 years old, a freshly minted captain who thought he'd learned everything at West Point and Ranger School. I was about to get the education of my lifetime. The C-130 Hercules aircraft groaned like a dying animal as it descended through the Afghan night. I tightened my grip on my M4 carbine, the webbing of my gloves familiar against my palms. Next to me, Sergeant First Class Bull Ramirez chewed gum with methodical intensity, his eyes closed as if he were on a beach vacation. "You're gripping that weapon like it's going to fly away, Captain," Ramirez said without opening his eyes. "Just making sure it's real, Sergeant." Ramirez chuckled. "Oh, it's real, and so are the people who'll be shooting at it. Relax your grip. White knuckles fatigue. Faster." Ooh. The advice was the first of hundreds Ramirez would give me over the next 6 months. At 27, I thought I was prepared. 4 years at West Point, Airborne School, Ranger School, the whole parade. I had the tab, the scroll, the theory. What I didn't have was the smell. The ramp lowered and the smell hit me first. A mixture of dust, diesel, burnt plastic, and something else I couldn't identify then but would later learn was the scent of a country that had known nothing but war for generations. The air was cold and dry, biting at my exposed skin despite the body armor. Forward operating Base Phoenix wasn't much to look at. A collection of HESCO barriers, sandbags, and tents huddled together in the valley. But to the 150 men of Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, it was home. Or would be for the next year. Our mission was straightforward on paper. Disrupt Taliban operations in the region, assist in establishing Afghan National Army presence, and gather intelligence. In reality, we were the bait in a giant trap, and everyone knew it except maybe the politicians back home. On my 3rd day at the FOB, Lieutenant Colonel Greer introduced me to my shadow. "Captain, meet Aziz. He was a Mujahideen commander against the Soviets. Now he's our chief interpreter and cultural advisor. Listen to him like he's your own conscience." Aziz nodded but didn't smile. "Captain Redding." "Welcome to the graveyard of empires. I will try to keep you alive." Over the next weeks, Aziz taught me what no manual ever could, how to read these subtle shifts in village dynamics, which elders held real power versus nominal authority, the complex tribal alliances that shifted like desert sands. He showed me how to drink tea the Afghan way, 3 sugars, always accepting the 3rd cup, and how to recognize when an invitation was genuine versus a potential ambush. But all the cultural training in the world couldn't prepare me for November 12th. We'd been tracking a mid-level Taliban commander for 3 weeks. Intelligence placed him in a compound near a village just outside our operational boundary. Command gave the green light for a night raid in and out before dawn. The Black Hawks descended like angry insects, kicking up a sandstorm that reduced visibility to near zero. We fast roped down, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the enemy could hear it. Ramirez gave me a thumbs up as we formed our perimeter. So far, so textbook. We breached the compound wall with controlled explosives. The courtyard was empty, too empty. "Captain," Ramirez whispered, his voice tight. "This is wrong." Before I could respond, the night exploded. Machine gun fire erupted from 3 positions simultaneously. RPGs streaked through the darkness. In seconds, we were pinned down, separated from our exfiltration point. "Contact front! Contact left!" voices shouted over the radio. Oh, wow. My training kicked in, return fire, assess positions, call for support. But something was wrong. The enemy wasn't where intelligence said they'd be. They were waiting, they had known. "Aziz," I shouted into my radio, "ask the prisoners where the secondary positions are." The interpreter was interrogating 2 men we'd captured in the main house. His reply chilled me. "They say we walk into trap, Captain. More fighters coming from north." I had 60 seconds to make a decision that would either save my men or get them killed. The textbook said, "Hold position, wait for air support." But the approaching reinforcements would flank us before the Apaches could arrive. "Ramirez, take first squad and secure the northern wall. Second squad with me. We're going out the way we came." "Captain, that's a killing zone," my platoon sergeant objected. "It's already a killing zone. At least this way we choose the fight." What happened next would haunt me for years. We lost 2 men that night. Good men. Fathers, brothers. Private First Class Daniel Fisher, 19 years old, from Ohio. Specialist Carlos Mendez, 22, from Texas. We saved 28. The math doesn't console you at 3 a.m., but it's what you hold on to. The Taliban commander escaped that night. We got him 6 months later, but by then I wasn't the same captain who'd stepped off that C-130. I was harder. And just beginning to understand the cost of wisdom, that first firefight strips away everything you pretend to be. All the bravado, all the theories. What's left? That's who you really are. For some men, it's nothing. They break. For others, they discover a strength they never knew they had. And that's where we'll end part 1. Because the real story, the valley I had to walk through, that comes next. Hit that subscribe button if you want to understand what happens when the body survives but the soul needs mending. Comment below where you're watching from. I read them all. I had them all. And if this resonated with you, show it with a like. If you're still with me after that first story, hit that subscribe button. Because what I'm about to share isn't about combat, it's about what happens after, when the battlefield follows you home. I read every comment, so tell me where you're watching from. And if this helps even one person understand, hit that like button. They never tell you about the silence. After my tour ended in 2003, I returned to a different kind of battlefield. The house in Colorado Springs was quiet. Too quiet. Too quiet. My wife Sarah would look at me with eyes that didn't understand why I jumped at fireworks on the 4th of July. Why I'd wake up at 3 a.m., convinced I was back in that Afghan compound. The Army gave me a medal for that November ambush, a Bronze Star with Valor device. They pinned it on my chest at a ceremony with speeches about courage and sacrifice. What they didn't give me was a way to forget Fisher's scream when that RPG hit, or Mendez's wedding photo falling from his pocket as we loaded his body onto the helicopter. I stayed in the Army. Of course I did. It was all I knew. Promoted to major, another deployment in 2005, then 2007. Each tour added new ghosts to the parade that followed me home. By 2009, I was Lieutenant Colonel Redding, a respected commander with a chest full of ribbons and a soul full of cracks. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. September 15th, 2009. I remember because it was my daughter Emily's 7th birthday. We were at Chuck E. Cheese, a cacophony of screaming children, arcade games, and bad pizza. Emily was opening presents when a balloon popped. Just a balloon, a stupid, colorful birthday balloon. But to me, it wasn't wide. The sound was identical to the pressure plate explosives we'd encountered outside Kandahar. Before I realized what I was doing, I had thrown myself over Emily shouting "incoming" to a room full of confused children and terrified parents. The silence that followed was worse than any combat. Sarah's face, a mixture of horror and pity, Emily crying, other parents pulling their children away. That's when I knew the war had won. It had followed me home and was now hurting my family. The Army doctors called it PTSD. They gave me pills. Sleeping pills, anti-anxiety pills, pills to stop the nightmares. They sent me to therapy where I sat in circles with other broken soldiers, all of us trying to reassemble ourselves with words and medication. But here's what they don't tell you about healing. Sometimes you have to break completely before you can rebuild. My medical retirement papers came through in 2010. 22 years of service ended not by enemy fire, but by a birthday balloon. The first year of retirement was the darkest valley I've ever walked through. Without the structure of the Army, without the mission, without the brothers who understood, I was lost. I'd sit in my basement for hours, staring at the medals in their velvet cases, wondering what they were for if I couldn't even protect my daughter from a balloon. Sarah found me there one night, surrounded by empty bottles and full ashtrays. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She just sat next to me and said, "Michael, the war's over, but you're still fighting it. Let us help you." That was my turning point. Not some dramatic moment of clarity, just my wife's hand on mine in a dark basement. I started writing. At first, just journaling, getting the memories out of my head and onto paper. Then I began organizing them. Lessons from combat, leadership principles that applied beyond the battlefield. The real cost of courage. A friend suggested I start a blog. Share what you've learned, he said. Maybe it'll help someone else. So I did. I wrote about that November ambush, about leadership under fire, about coming home broken. The response surprised me. Emails from other veterans, from spouses trying to understand, from young leaders in businesses who face their own kinds of battles. They all said the same thing. Thank you for saying what we feel but can't express. That blog became this YouTube channel. These stories became a way to turn my pain into purpose. The ghosts that haunted me became lessons that could help others. I still have bad days. I probably always will. The difference is now I have tools. Breathing exercises my therapist taught me. The veteran support group I attend every Tuesday. The understanding that strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about learning how to put yourself back together when you do break. Fisher and Mendez didn't get to come home. I did. The least I can do is make their sacrifice mean something by helping those who made it back. If you're struggling with your own battles, military or otherwise, know this. Asking for help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. Surviving is just the first step. Learning to live again, that's the real mission. Comment below if this resonated with you. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. Until next time, keep moving forward. If you've been with me through parts 1 and 2, you know this journey wasn't easy. From the battlefield to the dark valley of coming home to where I am today. If you're new here, hit subscribe. These aren't just war stories, they're survival manuals for life. I read every comment, so tell me your country below. If this message reaches you, hit like. They retired me from the Army in 2010, but they never retired the soldier in me. The first 2 years after my medical discharge were adjustment. That's the polite word for it. The reality was messier. I was a 45-year-old man with a body full of scars and a mind full of ghosts trying to figure out what a retired lieutenant colonel does in civilian life. Sarah, my wife, she was my anchor. She'd say, "Oh, Michael, you led men through hell. You can figure out the TSA meeting." But it wasn't that simple. In the Army, I had rank, respect, a clear mission. In Colorado Springs, I was just another guy at the grocery store, flinching when a car backfired. The blog I started, the one I mentioned last time, it was just therapy at first. A place to dump the memories so they'd stop drowning me. But then the emails started coming. A young Marine in San Diego struggling to talk to his wife after his deployment. Army wife in Texas trying to understand why her husband wouldn't sleep in their bed. Okay. A college student in New York writing a paper on leadership who found my post on decision-making under fire. That's when the idea hit me. Not a loud, dramatic idea, a quiet one. What if my pain could become someone else's roadmap? What if the lessons written in Blood and Loss could prevent others from bleeding the same way? In 2012, with a shaky hand and a Veterans Administration business loan, I started erecting resilience. It wasn't fancy. A small office, a website, and me. My mission, help veterans transition home and teach civilians the real meaning of leadership, not the corporate kind, the kind that keeps people alive. The first year was hard. Convincing companies to hire a combat veteran with PTSD wasn't easy. Convincing veterans to trust a retired officer with their pain was harder. I remember one kid, couldn't have been more than 25, a former corporal who'd done 2 tours in Iraq. He sat in my office, bouncing his knee, unable to make eye contact. "They say I'm unemployable," he muttered. I leaned forward. "Oh, they said I was broken too. Look at me now. What's your skill?" "Yeah, I was a driver, convoy security." "You kept men alive in the most dangerous places on earth," I said. "You think a logistics company couldn't use that focus? That vigilance? We worked together for months." Resume writing, interview practice, breathing techniques for when the anxiety spiked. He got a job with a trucking firm. Not glamorous, but it was a start. Last I heard, he's a safety supervisor. He keeps other drivers safe. He found his new mission. That's the secret they don't tell you. The war doesn't end when you come home. The mission just changes. My new mission wasn't about taking hills. It was about building bridges. Bridges between the military and civilian world. Bridges between trauma and recovery. Then came the YouTube channel. My daughter, Emily, now a teenager, set it up for me in 2018. Dad, you tell these stories to everyone who walks in here. Tell them to the world. I was nervous. Who would want to hear an old soldier's stories? Turns out many of you did. The first video, me just talking about that November ambush, got a few hundred views. Then 1,000. Then the comments started. This helped me understand my father. I'm a teacher and I use your leadership lessons in my classroom. A thank you for making me feel less alone. That's when I realized the power of story. My story of loss became someone else's lesson in resilience. My failure to protect Fisher and Mendez became a lesson in accepting imperfect choices. My breakdown at a birthday party became a lesson in vulnerability being strength. I'm 65 now. The hair is fully silver, the knees ache when it rains, a souvenir from that fast rope descent in 2002. But my mind is clearer than it's been in decades, because I've made peace with the ghosts. Fisher and Mendez aren't nightmares anymore. They're reminders of the cost and the responsibility that comes with survival. I still visit their graves at Arlington when I can. I tell them about the lives we've helped. I tell them their sacrifice wasn't just for a piece of ground in Afghanistan. It was for the idea that the ones who come after might have it a little easier. That's the legacy. Not the medals in the case, but the lives touched, the pain eased, the lessons passed on. So what's the point of all this? If you take one thing from my story, let it be this. Your greatest battle isn't the one that breaks you. It's the one you fight to put yourself back together. And in that fight, you don't have to be a hero. Your mission isn't over until you decide it is. Find your new mission. Build your new legacy. It might be quiet. It might start in a small office or with a single video, but it matters. If this 3-part journey meant something to you, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what your mission is. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe in turning pain into purpose, hit that like button and subscribe. This is Lieutenant Colonel Michael Redding, retired, signing off. Stay resilient, build your legacy.